The strange letter, I still remember the night it arrived. It was raining outside, the kind of heavy rain that drowns out your own thoughts. When I heard the dull thud of something slipping through my front door's mail slot, at first I didn't care. Bills, junk, advertisements, that's all I ever got. But the sound lingered in my head like it was somehow heavier than paper. I waited, sitting in my chair, staring at the flickering TV that I wasn't really watching. But curiosity won. It always does. When I opened the door, there it was. A single envelope on the floor. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in black ink across the front, my full name. Not resident, not to whom it may concern. My name, written in sharp, deliberate strokes. I froze. Nobody writes letters anymore, not to me at least. And yet there it was. I picked it up. The paper was thick, almost velvety. It smelled faintly of smoke, like it had been near a fire. My fingertips tingled as I held it, as though the ink itself still held heat. I sat back down in my chair, turned off the TV, and stared at the envelope for a good 10 minutes. I told myself not to open it, but the truth is I wanted to. I needed to. When I tore the flap open, I swear the room grew colder. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded neatly into thirds. The handwriting matched the envelope. Careful, deliberate, as though every letter had been drawn, not written, said only one sentence. The door is ready. Do not keep it waiting. That's it. No explanation. No signature. I laughed at first. A nervous, shaky laugh. Some kind of prank, I thought. A joke, but the laugh died in my throat as soon as I looked closer. Because at the bottom of the page, faintly embossed into the paper, was a symbol. A circle, broken by a jagged line, with what looked like an eye in the center. Here's the thing. I had seen that symbol before. Once. Years ago. I was a kid then, maybe 10 or 11, exploring the attic of my grandmother's house. She was a collector of strange things, old books, cracked mirrors, jars of herbs she never used. But there had been one item, tucked away in a small wooden box, a brass key with that exact same symbol etched into its head. I never forgot it, because the moment I touched that key, my grandmother had snatched it away from me with a scream. I'd never heard her raise her voice before that day. She locked the box back up, hid it, and told me never to touch it again. And now, here it was, the same mark, staring up at me from this letter. I should have burned it right then and there, should have torn it to pieces and thrown it into the rain. But instead, I read the words again. Slowly, carefully. The door is ready. Do not keep it waiting. What door? My front door? Some other door? That night, sleep didn't come easy. I kept the letter on the nightstand, telling myself I'd throw it away in the morning. But at 3:07 a.m., I woke up to a sound, a knock, 3 times, at the back of the house. And here's the part that still chills me when I think about it. I don't have a back door. Not anymore. The old one was sealed shut years ago when I renovated. There shouldn't have been anything back there, but I heard it clear as day. Knock, knock, knock. And in that moment, the words from the letter burned themselves into my brain. The door's ready. Do not keep it waiting. My throat went dry. My chest felt like it was caving in. But somehow, against every instinct, I got out of bed. I walked toward the sound, and the closer I got, the more the house seemed to change around me. The air grew thicker, the shadows stretched longer, and the silence between each knock was filled with a low hum, like the walls themselves were vibrating. When I reached the kitchen, the place where the sealed door used to be, I froze, because there right in front of me stood a door, wooden, black, with the same symbol carved deep into its center, and I knew then that the letter wasn't a prank, it was an invitation. A knock at midnight. I didn't move at first. I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at that black door where there shouldn't have been one. My heart pounded so hard I thought the noise would give me away too, whatever was on the other side. The knocks had stopped, but the silence was worse. The house was too still, too aware. I could almost hear my own pulse, echoing in the walls. Finally, I whispered to myself, this isn't real. This can't be real. I reached out and touched the wood. It was solid. It's cold, but real. My hand recoiled like I'd burned it. That's when I noticed the handle. Brass, shaped like a twisted vine, tarnished with age. and etched across it was the same broken circle symbol from the letter. My stomach dropped. I should have run back upstairs, locked the bedroom door, hidden under the covers like a child. But I didn't. Something pulled me closer, like an invisible thread was tugging at my chest, urging me to open it. Before I knew it, my fingers had wrapped around the handle, and then another knock. It's time from inside. I froze, breath caught in my throat. My body screamed at me to let go, but I couldn't. My hand was glued to the handle, muscles locked. The brass grew warmer, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. Knock, knock, 3 times again. I forced myself to speak, though my voice cracked. Who's there? Nothing. Not silence. Exactly more like the absence of sound, if that makes sense. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then came a whisper, faint, impossible, but I heard it. It's my name. Spoken slowly, drawn out like the walls themselves were trying to say it. That was enough to break whatever hold the door had on me. I yanked my hand back and stumbled away, nearly tripping over a chair leg. My chest heaved, my mouth dry. Backed out of the kitchen, eyes never leaving the black wood. And then, just like that, it was gone. I blinked. The sealed wall was back. No door, no handle. Just smooth plaster where it had always been. I don't remember climbing the stairs. 1 second I was in the kitchen, the next I was shutting my bedroom door and leaning against it, shaking like I'd run a marathon. The letter still sat on my nightstand. I picked it up, wanting to tear it apart, to destroy it. But when I unfolded it again, the message had changed. The first line was the same. The door is ready, but beneath it, new words had appeared, written in the same sharp hand. You heard it? Now it knows you. My skin crawled. I dropped the paper like it was toxic, stumbling backward until I hit the wall. The rest of that night passed in fragments. A blur of restless pacing, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the shadows under the doorframe. I don't think I slept at all. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every flicker of the clock's red digits felt like they were counting down to something. When the first light of morning crept through the blinds, I let out a shaky breath. The house looked normal again. The kitchen wall was still sealed. No strange doors, no whispers. But the letter was still there. The new line hadn't faded. I told myself it was a dream. Hallucination brought on by stress, by lack of sleep, by too much time alone in this old house. But deep down I knew better. Because dreams don't leave scars. And when I looked at my right hand, the one that had touched the handle, I saw a faint red mark burned into my skin. Circle, broken by a jagged line. The same symbol. The room that wasn't there before the mark on my hand didn't fade. By the second day, it was still there, angry and red, as if branded into my skin. I tried everything. Soap, scrubbing, even ice. Nothing worked. Every time I looked at it, I felt that same humming in the walls, faint but steady, like the house was breathing along with me. I stopped going near the kitchen. I didn't want to see that wall. Not again. But avoiding it didn't help, because the house changed. It started small, subtle things I almost missed. A picture frame I could have sworn was crooked was suddenly straight, a crack in the ceiling that had never been there before. Doors that creaked open an inch when I knew I'd shut them tight. But the worst was on the third night. I was heading upstairs, exhausted, when I noticed something out of place at the end of the hall. A door. A white wooden door cracked open just slightly. Here's the thing. I'd lived in this house for 7 years. That end of the hall had always been a blank wall. There was no room there, no doorway. But now, plain as day, a door waited for me. My throat tightened. I told myself not to look, not to touch it. But my feet carried me forward anyway, as if drawn by some magnetic pull. The closer I got, the more the air seemed to shift. Cold but heavy, pressing against my chest. I pushed the door open. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary room. Empty, dust on the floor, bare walls, no furniture, just a space that shouldn't exist. I stepped inside cautiously. The air was stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, though the room wasn't very big. I counted my steps 5 across, 4 deep. Barely a small bedroom. But something about it felt wrong. Off. Like the angles weren't quite right. Like the corners stretched further than my eyes could follow. That's when I saw it. The wallpaper. Faint patterns covered the wall's spirals, lines, and symbols. Most of them I didn't recognize, but one stood out. The broken circle with the jagged line, repeated over and over like a mantra, like a warning. The walls hummed again, louder now, vibrating beneath the thin wallpaper. My vision blurred at the edges, staggered back, heart racing, and then the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, rushing to it, but the knob wouldn't turn. I pounded on it, shouting, but the sound was swallowed instantly, like the walls drank my voice whole. Then I heard it. The whispering, at first just a murmur, then clearer. Voices layered and overlapping, speaking words I didn't understand, some too fast, some too slow, some hissing like snakes. But one voice cut through them, all sharp, deliberate. It spoke my name. I pressed my back to the wall, scanning the empty room. "Who's there?" I demanded, though my voice shook. The whispers stopped. For a moment there was only silence. And then knock, knock, knock. Not from the door I'd entered. From the wall directly behind me. I spun around. My hand brushed the wallpaper, and it gave way beneath my palm, soft and warm, like skin. I jerked back, horrified. The wall pulsed, once, twice, beating in rhythm with my heart. That's when the knob behind me finally clicked. The door creaked open. I didn't hesitate. I bolted out, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against it, gasping, eyes wide. But when I looked again, the door was gone. Just a blank wall, as if the room had never been there at all. Shadows that whispered my name. I stopped trusting the house after that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light felt intentional, like the place was aware of me. Watching, waiting. I told myself I imagined the hidden room, that stress and insomnia were twisting my senses. But the mark on my hand throbbed with every heartbeat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the house had changed me. Then came the shadows. It started in the corners, as faint shapes at the edges of my vision. It's too tall, too crooked, always gone when I turned to face them. The kind of movement you'd dismiss as a trick of the light, except the house was always dark, no matter how many lamps I turned on. By the fourth night, the whispers returned. I was sitting in the living room, clutching a half-empty mug of coffee, when I heard it. Faint, stretched out syllables crawling along the walls. At first it was gibberish, that same layered nonsense from the strange room. But then, just beneath the noise, a voice formed. Soft, patient, familiar. It spoke my name. I froze, breath caught in my chest. The sound wasn't coming from outside, it was inside. Curling out of the shadows, sliding across the floor, wrapping itself around me. "Stop," I whispered, though my voice trembled. The shadows quivered, as if they'd heard me, as if they were listening. And then, all at once, the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed me whole. The air grew thick, damp, impossible to breathe. My skin prickled, my eyes straining to adjust, but the dark was absolute. That's when I saw them. Figures in the black, dozens of them stretched along the walls, standing just beyond reach. Their bodies were wrong-bent in ways that hurt to look at. No faces, just voids where faces should be. And all of them were whispering my name in perfect unison. I dropped the mug, shattered, but the sound was smothered instantly, swallowed by the same suffocating silence I'd felt in the hidden room. My legs locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. One of the shadows broke away from the rest, slithering across the wall like spilled ink. It elongated, reaching for me, stretching until its hand brushed my arm. Cold, so cold it burned. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the light snapped back on. The room was empty. No figures, no whispers, just shards of porcelain scattered across the floor, coffee soaking into the rug. I stood there for a long time, staring at the walls, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. But when I finally gathered the courage to bend down and clean the mess, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. My reflection. The shards of glass from the mug had caught the light, and in them I saw my own face, except it wasn't right. My mouth was stretched into a grin I wasn't making, eyes wide and unblinking. I stumbled back, but every shard showed the same thing. My reflection smiling at me when I wasn't smiling. My reflection whispering when I wasn't speaking. I swept the pieces into a pile and shoved them into the trash, refusing to look again. But that night, as I lay in bed with my eyes squeezed shut, I heard the whispers once more. It's not from the walls this time, from inside my own head, repeating the same words over and over in my own voice. Open the door. Open the door.
Out.
Open the door. The key, I shouldn't have touched the whispers, didn't stop. By day, they were faint a hiss in the back of my mind, like static on a broken radio. By night, they grew louder, bolder, until it felt like a chorus living inside my skull. Always the same command over and over, open the door, but there was no door. The black door was gone, the hidden room erased, the house quiet, at least on the surface. Still, I knew the door was waiting. Somewhere, and then I remembered the attic. Yeah, I hadn't been up there in years. Too many memories of my grandmother, too many boxes of her strange belongings. But the mark on my hand burned whenever I thought of it, as if urging me upward. I resisted for 2 days. On the third, I gave in. The ladder creaked as I climbed, dust falling into my hair. The air grew thicker the higher I went, tinged with the smell of mildew and something sharper, almost metallic. When I pushed the attic hatch open, the sight hit me like a punch to the chest. A wooden box. The same one I'd seen as a child, shoved into the far corner beneath a metheten blanket. I felt that same childish dread crawl up my spine, but my feet carried me forward anyway. My hands shook as I pulled the blanket aside. The box was smaller than I remembered, but heavier when I lifted it. A lock held it shut, rusted but still intact, and carved into the lid deep. Deliberate was the symbol, the broken circle. I didn't have the key to the lock, but the whispers in my head told me I didn't need one. They pulsed with every heartbeat, guiding me. My hands moved on their own, prying at the latch until, with a screech of metal, it snapped open. Inside lay the brass key, same one I had touched as a boy. It was darker now, tarnished with age, but the symbol gleamed bright as ever at the head. My mark, the one on my hand, seared when I looked at it. A perfect match. I should have left it. I should have buried the box back under the dust and never touched it again. But I didn't. The moment my fingers brushed the brass, the attic changed. The air shifted heavier, denser. The shadows stretched, reaching across the floor like spilled ink, and I heard her voice. My grandmother's. Soft, trembling, echoing in the dark. You weren't supposed to touch it. I spun around, heart pounding. But no one was there. Just boxes, cobwebs, silence. Still, her words clung to me, dripping with dread. You weren't supposed to touch it. I held the key tighter, even as my skin burned where it touched. I don't know why. Maybe because the whispers inside me screamed when I tried to set it down. Maybe because part of me believed it was mine, that it had always been mine. Then, faintly, I heard the knock. Not from the attic, not from the walls, from downstairs. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, patient. I clutched the key and froze. The sound came again, knock, 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 louder this time. And I knew without question what it wanted. The key in my hand glowed faintly in the dark, and the whispers inside me grew louder than ever. The door is ready. Do not keep it waiting. When the walls began to breathe, the knocking didn't stop. 3 times, then silence, then 3 more. Always patient, always steady. By the 5th night, I stopped answering, stopped moving, sat on the couch, clutching the brass key in my hand, staring at the wall where the black door had once appeared. I told myself if I ignored it long enough, it would vanish. But that was when the house changed again. It started with the air, heavy, thick. Every breath scraped against my throat like dust. I thought maybe the vents had clogged, but then I felt it, the rhythm, a rise, a fall. The air wasn't stale. It was moving, breathing. The walls inhaled. The floorboards swelled upward beneath my feet. The ceiling sagged as if lungs filled behind it. The whole house expanded and contracted in a slow, steady rhythm, like a chest rising and falling. I staggered back, clutching my head. No, I whispered. No, no. But the house exhaled, and with it came the whispers. Not faint anymore. Not distant. They filled the rooms, pouring from the walls, the vents, the cracks between the floorboards. Those voices. Hundreds. All overlapping, writhing together like a swarm. Oh, and at the center of them was mine. My own voice, repeating the words I dreaded. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't matter. Sound was inside me, rattling my bones, vibrating in my teeth. Then I saw it. The plaster on the nearest wall rippled, pushing outward. A bulge, swelling as though something inside pressed to get out. The wallpaper stretched, cracked, and split, revealing what looked like veins pulsing beneath. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. The walls weren't walls anymore. They were skin. Something moved beneath the surface shapes, crawling, shifting, pushing. Fingers, arms, faces pressed against the thin layer, stretching it like fabric. Mouths opened, screaming silently, before sinking back into the flesh of the house. I dropped the key. It hit the floor with a metallic clang. The house froze. The walls shuddered once, then stilled. The breathing stopped. The whispers cut off mid-sentence. I crouched down, hand shaking, and picked the key back up, and the house exhaled again. That's when I understood. It wasn't just the house. It was me. The key burned in my palm, pulsing in time with the rhythm of the walls. My mark throbbed with it. We were connected now, the key, the house, and me. A single heartbeat. I staggered upstairs, desperate to get away, though there was nowhere left to run. The whispers followed, rising in pitch, hissing promises I couldn't understand. When I reached the hallway, I froze. The door was back. The same black door I had seen in the kitchen, standing at the end of the hall, tall and waiting. Only this time, the symbol carved into it glowed faintly, like molten gold. And the knob, the twisted brass vine, gleamed in the dark. The whispers fell silent. The house held its breath. For the first time, I realized the truth. It wasn't that the door wanted to be opened. It was that the house had grown tired of waiting. The truth behind the door, the black door, waited for me at the end of the hall. I stood frozen, the brass key slick with sweat in my hand. The air felt heavy again, charged, electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. My skin prickled. The mark on my palm burned hotter than ever. The whispers didn't push me this time. They didn't need to. I already knew I was going to open it. Step by step, I approached. The floor groaned beneath me, the house shuddering with every movement, like it was holding its breath. When I reached the door, the knob pulsed faintly with heat, matching the rhythm of my own heart. I hesitated. One final second of resistance. Then I slid the key into the lock. The moment the teeth clicked, the whispers erupted. 1,000 voices, howling, laughing, screaming in triumph. My head rang with it, my knees buckled. The door vibrated under my hand, straining against the frame, desperate to open. I turned the key, the lock clicked, the door swung inward. Everything went silent. Beyond the threshold wasn't another room. It wasn't even darkness. It was something else. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. A void that wasn't empty, shifting colors that weren't colors, shapes that moved in ways my eyes couldn't follow. The space twisted and bent, alive and endless, like I was staring into the lungs of something vast and breathing. And then came the smell. Rot, earth, smoke, all at once, thick enough to choke me. I stumbled back, but the floor seemed to tilt forward, pulling me closer. The walls of the house bent with it, as if leaning toward the open door. That's when I saw them, the shadows. Not flat this time, not tricks of the light. Figures, dozens, hundreds, crawling, writhing, stretching out of the void. Their bodies flickered between shapes, faces I half recognized, limbs bending wrong, mouths whispering without sound. Some reached toward me, their fingers elongated, grasping. And in the midst of them, towering above the rest, was a figure that froze my blood. It had no face, just the symbol. The broken circle carved where its eyes should be, and when it leaned forward, I understood. The house hadn't been haunted. I had. The whispers weren't trying to trick me. They were guiding me home. The mark on my hand, the key in my grip, the blood in my veins, it all belonged to them. To it, I should have run, should have slammed the door shut and thrown the key away. But my body didn't move. Instead, I stepped forward. The air thickened, pressing against me, but I couldn't resist. My legs carried me across the threshold, into the shifting void, into the grasp of those reaching shadows. The whispers returned, no longer layered, no longer fractured. They were clear now, unified, and they spoke only one thing: welcome back. Why I can never leave this house, I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same way beyond the door. Minutes stretch into hours, hours collapse into seconds. Sometimes I wake thinking days have passed, only to find the clock hands haven't moved at all. Other times I blink and whole seasons are gone, but one thing never changes: the house. It's still here, still breathing, still waiting. And so am I. I tried leaving once. The front door was open, sunlight streaming in, brighter than I'd seen in weeks. I stepped outside, felt fresh air on my skin, heard birds singing. For a moment I thought I was free, but when I turned around, the house was standing behind me, closer than it should have been. The black door in its center wide open, pulling me back. The world around it bent and twisted, warped until there was nothing left but the house. I walked inside again without meaning to. My body obeyed something else now, something deeper. I understand it better each day. The door wasn't meant to be opened by just anyone. It chose me. The mark on my hand, the whispers in my head, they weren't curses. They were invitations, a calling. And once you answer, you don't get to leave. The shadows keep me company now. They don't whisper as much anymore. They just watch. Some of them look like people I used to know. My grandmother, neighbors I haven't seen in years. Faces from dreams I barely remember. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, one of them smiles back at me. And the worst part, I don't feel afraid anymore. The fear burned out long ago, replaced by something else, something heavier. A belonging I never asked for but can't deny. The house isn't just where I live now, it's what I am. And the whispers tell me the same thing every night before I close my eyes. You will never leave, but others will come. That's why I'm writing this. Not to beg for help. No one can help me now. Not to warn you, though. Maybe part of me wants to. I'm writing this because I can feel the house stretching outward, reaching, growing. The walls are no longer just inside these rooms. They're in the paper, in the ink, in the words. You're reading this now, aren't you? And you're thinking it's just a story, a trick. But tell me, don't you feel it? The heaviness in the air around you. The faint hum in the walls, like something is breathing behind them. Psst. The urge to glance over your shoulder even though you know no one's there. That's how it starts. First the whispers, then the knock, then the door. It will find you soon. And when it does, you'll understand why I can never leave this house. Because by then, I'll be inside it too.